So it's time to move on to sessions. And before we jump into actually writing some code, we should talk about what sessions are. You may know, but we'll give it a brief overview in any case. So when I'm on a web browser, if I go to a site, www.cnn.com, doesn't matter. I hit this web page, and what I've done is I've sent a request to some server out on the internet somewhere saying, hey, I would like to get the homepage for cnn.com. And at the moment I'm making that request, the web server knows certain things about me. It knows my IP address. I've sent in my preferred language, probably. I've sent in all kinds of things, all part of the request. So the web server takes the request, assembles the response, and sends back a fully formatted web page consisting of text and images, maybe links to videos, whatever it may be. And the instant it finishes sending me that information, it forgets about me. It doesn't know anything else about me. I'm gone. As far as I'm concerned, if I click on a link here, if I click on whatever this is about Jeffrey Epstein, as far as the web server is concerned, I'm an entirely new person and it knows nothing about my previous request. So that's not a problem if you're surfing web pages and the site doesn't need to know anything about you. It is a problem for things like user authentication. How does the web server, which is stateless and doesn't know anything about me between visits, how does it know whether I'm logged in or not? How does it know anything that needs to persist between page requests? Well, this is where sessions come in. And the sessions are something that we need to set up in our application. Now, there's a number of ways of implementing this. The easiest way is to choose a session package that you think suits your needs. And there are many to choose from. Gorilla, a package called Gorilla.Sessions. There are many to choose from. I'm going to use a particular one that I like very much. So the one that I'm going to use is right here at github.com/alexedwards/scs. So I'm going to install that package before I do anything else. So I scroll down, I find the installation string, copy it, go back to my IDE. If I have my application running, I stop it. And then I say go get, or I guess I'd paste the whole thing in there, go get github.com and so forth. Hit return. It should install it. I can verify that by looking at go mod. There it is. It's all installed. And now I can start to use it. Now when you're using a session, regardless as to what package you're using, you almost certainly have to initialize it in some way, shape, or form. And the way that we do that is right here in our main file. So I can, maybe just after I declare my app config and before I go get my template cache, doesn't matter where I put it, but I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to simply say create a variable called session. Now, session, I'm going to assign it right now, but I'm going to change that in a minute. Session is from the package we've just installed, SCS, and he gives us examples here, where everything that we use to call that is actually calling SCS. So, scs.new. And I better, yeah, it imported it. Good. scs.new. And then I need to say, I don't need to, but I'm going to, how long do I want my sessions to live, for example? So if I look at that variable session I just created, it has a bunch of functions that I can use, okay? And one of the ones that I want to use is actually called lifetime. So LIF, lifetime. And that's going to be equal to a particular value. And I want it to last for 24 hours. So I can just say 24 times time, which is a built-in Go package, dot hour. And now the sessions that are created will last for 24 hours, which is long enough. You might want to go for 30 minutes if it's highly secure and you want people logged out as soon as possible, but 24 hours is suitable for our purpose, so I'll leave it there right now. Also, I'm using the default session package. If I go back up here and look, you can see that it actually has a bunch of different stores. So by default, it uses cookies. It just uses cookies to store our sessions. And that's all we're going to do right now. We may look at storing them in Redis or something else later on, but there are many different stores that he has. Badger is a built-in database that you can put right into your Go application and it will store all the sessions there. Bolt is a similar thing. Bolt and Badger serve the same purpose. In fact, one is based on the other. You can store them in MemStore, you can store them in a MySQL database, a Postgres database, a Redis key value store, or a SQLite 3 database. So we could do all of that, but we're not going to right now. We're just going to go with the defaults. So since we're storing in cookies, And since all sessions use cookies in one form or another, we need to actually set some parameters for that cookie. So session.cookie, which is built into the package, we want to say persist. Should the cookies persist after the browser window is closed by the end user? I'm going to say true. If you want the sessions to disappear the moment that someone closes a browser window or quits the browser, you set that to false. And then the session will not persist the next time they open a window or fire up their web browser. Session.cookie.sameSite. And this is a parameter that's set in the cookie that tells it, how strict you want to be about what site this cookie applies to. And we're going to go with a default that's built into Go called SameSite Lax Mode. And there are other options there, but this is sufficient for our purposes right now. And finally, session.cookie.secure. Well, this will insist that the cookies be encrypted and that the connection is from HTTPS instead of HTTP. I'm going to set that to false. In production, you want that to be true. And I'm going to set it to false because we're hitting localhost 8080, and that is not an encrypted connection. So we'll set it to false right now. It seems to me that's the second time we've had to do this sort of thing. Session cookie secure equals false. Back in middleware, if you recall, we did the same thing here for the cookie that's set for nosurf. We had to set that to false as well. Well, that seems really awkward. Now I have two things to remember when I have to go into production. I have to make changes in two places. That seems to me to be really not a great idea. So let's go back to our main function and think about how, before we go any further, we might be able to set this variable everywhere it needs to be set. Basically, the question I'm asking is a really simple one. Am I running as a production server, or am I running as a development server? Well, it seems to me that one of the places we could actually change this might be by storing a value in app_config. And the app_config value might be something as simple as in production, and make that a bool. Now remember, we said the great thing about our app_config being set up the way that it is that I can store a value in here and it's immediately available to every part of the application that uses app_config. So I've now got a place to store that value. Let's go set it. And I might just say right here, change this to true when in production. And there's even a better way to do this, but we'll get to that later on. All I'm going to do is say app.inProduction equals false. There. Now I can use this value anywhere that I need to. So for example, I can use it right here. Where is it? Cookie secure. I can use it there. Can I use it in my middleware? Well, I want to put it right here. Let's try pasting it in and see what happens. No, I can't use that right there. Why? Because this is a function that has no access to that app_config. Because back in main Go, my app_config I declared here. So it's limited to the scope of this main variable. Now, since middleware is in the same package as main, it's in the main package, all I really need to do is to cut this out of here and put it outside of the main function. And now it's available to middleware, so I can store it in there. So I actually have a secure app in production. Same site can be left what it is, but I have my secure set here, and I have my secure set here, and I don't need to worry about doing anything other than changing this false to a true before I compile the application for production. All right, so I've set up this session, and one of the things that I said a moment ago was I might at some point need to use this session variable in my middleware, for example, which doesn't know anything about it and has no access to the app variable. So how can I actually make that work a little bit better? Well, it's not too difficult. What I'm going to do is come up here and declare a variable. Var session is going to be a pointer to scs.sessionManager. Okay? And that says it's not being used anywhere. Well, it's not, because this variable, even though it has the same name as this variable, these are two different things entirely. And what this is actually called is variable shadowing. And it's a really difficult problem to fix, to define so you can fix it when it happens to your code. So you need to be conscious of this. This variable and this variable are not the same. To make them the same, all I have to do is that. Now I'm referring to a variable that exists outside of the scope and is available to the entire main package. So I've created that variable session, and I've set its necessary parameters, Where am I going to use this session? Where is the most likely place that I'm ever going to have to get information from the session? Well, the most likely place is almost certainly handlers. Here is where I need to get access to that session. But because handlers is its own package, right here, it's its own package handlers, and that session variable, session, exists in the main package, never the two shall meet. I need to get that session over to handlers and to anywhere else I might possibly have to use it. So again, where's the best place to put this? Let's put it in config.go. Now remember, when I declared this variable, it's of type SCS Session Manager. So let's go back to our config and create another field, another member to this. And it's going to be called session. And it has to have a capital letter so it's visible, and it is of type star SCS Session Manager, a pointer to an SCS Session Manager. Okay, so now we have a place to store our session. Back in main.go, now, once I've declared this session, all I have to do is say app.session equals session. And now, if I need to in my middleware have access to that session, I can do it. So, not my middleware, in my handlers, let's say I go down to one of my handlers here and say app.session, m.app.session, you see I have access to it. And I can do all the things that I need to do from it. So I can get a value from the session, or I can put a value into the session. Well, we're not doing that yet, so I'll delete it. I'm just demonstrating that, in fact, I now have access to that session variable stored in the application config. So I've created this session so far. All right, before I go any further, let's make sure everything compiles. Even though I'm not using that session, let's try running our application. It compiles. Perfect. So I go back over here and maybe reload the home page and go to the about page. Perfect. Okay. So is that all I need to do? Do I need to actually just, now that I've got the session variable and I can use it in my handlers and I can use it in my main package, and I can even actually use it in my middleware because middleware is in the same package as main and the session is declared at the package level, it seems like I've got everything I need to start using sessions. Well, not quite. There is one more thing I need to worry about. Because web servers, by their very nature, are not state aware, I need to add some middleware that tells this web server, and our web application is a web server, that it should remember state using sessions. And fortunately, it's really easy to use. All I have to do is come in here and create some new middleware. So I'm in my middleware.go package, and I'm going to create a new function, func, and I'll call it session load. All that does is load the session. And like all middleware, it needs to take a parameter, next, and it has to be an HTTP handler, right there. And it has to return an HTTP handler. And inside the function definition, what I do is really quite straightforward. Return session.load and save, and pass it next. So all this does, we can go look at the source code for this if you want to. All it does is it provides middleware which automatically loads and saves session data for the current request and communicates the session token to and from the client in a cookie. That's it. So now I've got this middleware, but it's not being used. So let's go back to our roots and use it. mux.use and paste. Session save and load. Now no, that's fine where it is. Now I have access to the sessions. So if I quit out of the application and compile it, it should compile again, and it does. I'm going to go back to my middleware and give these things comments like they're supposed to. Session loads and saves the session on every request. NoSurf adds CSRF protection to all post requests. Okay, and this one, I'd left it there as a reference, but I don't need it anymore, so it's going away. So now I have everything I need to start using sessions. I've initialized my session in the main function. I've stored it in my configuration, my application-wide configuration. I've added the necessary middleware to save and load them. We should be good to go. So in the next lecture, let's try playing with sessions and seeing how it might all work. See you then.